Someone gave, someone donated, someone left a legacy. Generations of generous someones have helped shape Rhode Island into this amazing place we call home. How do you thank them? By leaving your own legacy. We can help.
Welcome to another segment of In Another Opinion, a public information program where our discussions are focused on the communities of color in the state of Rhode Island. I'm your host, Peter Wells. My guest today is Nick Figueroa, Executive Director of College Visions. Hey, Nick, thanks for coming back.
Peter, thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So listen, we're going to call this a College Vision update.
Okay.
This is the beginning of the new school year.
Sure, yes.
And so what's going on with College Visions these days?
Yeah, so we're off to the start of our year, which starts with in late July, August. We work with 65 high school students from the urban core, mostly from Providence. These are first-gen, low-income students. And essentially what we do is we prepare them for the college access process, work with them and their parents on summer melt. So summer melt happens at the end of the year when kids are ready to go off to school, whereas some kids don't end up going to the school that they've been accepted to simply because they're not completely aware what the financial commitments are or what the documents that are necessary for that institution to have. So at the beginning of the year, we spend a week at Rhode Island College. We teach them the higher ed lexicon, what some of their responsibilities are. We meet with parents throughout the course of the year. We take them on college visits. We help them with their applications, their financial aid forms, et cetera. And that's essentially the journey that they go through in close to 12 months that they're with us.
Do most of the students that you work with end up at a college in Rhode Island?
Yes. So a majority of our students end up either at Rhode Island College or the University of Rhode Island.
Okay.
We have some students at the Community College of Rhode Island as well. But overall, our students will be in California. We have some in the Midwest, some in Florida.
Okay.
So we have students all over the place.
I had, interesting enough, I had on the show not too long ago, it hasn't aired as yet, but I had Andrew Bramson.
Andrew, yes.
From College Crusade.
College Crusade, yes.
And we talked a bit about his program, which is different from yours.
It's slightly different, yes.
But both of you are doing what's necessary to try
Yes.
to get youngsters into school,
Yes.
which is really the key issue. And I also had a show which did air already. I had Frank Sanchez in from RIC.
President Sanchez,
And
yes.
we were talking about the increase in minority students at RIC. That this coming year he was looking at potentially a 50-50 ratio of minority students and non-minority students, which is a big tick up from a couple of years ago.
It is, and it's also matching what the demographic trends are in the country.
Yeah.
So I think we've had plenty of discussions around what's called the browning of America, right?
Yes.
So by the year 2040, 2050, you'll see that the minority population will be the majority population. And I think what needs to happen with many higher ed institutions, and I know President Sanchez recognizes this, is that the same traditional student that's been arriving at your campus, those numbers for those individuals are dwindling. And so you have to go out and recruit students that are in your populace. And moving forward, you will see that that's more students of color. And so I give kudos to Rhode Island College for actually striving to get that number and for recognizing what that shift is that's taking place.
Yeah, and it has happened since Frank has been there.
Yes.
And I guess he's sensitive, being a Latino himself, he's somewhat sensitive to the need for increasing the minority population at higher ed.
Right.
Although I don't like that word minority, but we'll just say people of color.
People of color, yes.
Yeah. I've always detested the use of that term because of the definition of it.
Sure.
It just means less than.
Right, right. And that's the connotation. And I think bigger picture, if we think globally, people of color are actually the majority.
In the world, absolutely.
In the world, yes.
Yeah. Well, Now we'll have to talk to our English teachers and tell them to remove that.
Right.
So you mentioned 48 students or 42 students that you're working with?
Well, 65.
65
yeah,
students.
65 high school students. We also have over 300 college students. So part of our program, certainly we work with high school kids to get them into college.
Right.
But that's not enough for us. So what we continue to do is advise them all the way through their college years into graduation, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
And so we give our students between 4 to 6 years to graduate from college. And for us, because we have this co-advising model, what we find is that our students end up graduating at a higher rate. Again, these are first-gen low-income students, at a higher rate than the national average. So for us, it's 66%. The national average is 21% for the same student demographic. And that's really based on having a relationship with students from their high school years, forming relationships with the advising, financial aid office and student support services that are on campus, so that we can be a liaison for the student as well, along with providing the advising.
Now, are the advisors past students or?
Yeah, so this is our secret sauce. So if I tell you, you can't tell anybody.
Okay.
Our success is due in large part to the fact that we have our advisors are CV alum.
Okay.
And so we've been fortunate to have students who have gone through the program, have gone off to college, have graduated, and have come back to work for us. And so it adds to the experience to be able to tell students that we're working with, hey, I've been in your shoes, I know what it's like, I'm going to guide you through this process.
Not to take away from college visions, but College Crusade also uses that model, apparently.
And they do great work.
Yeah, they do. Well, you both do. I mean, I think any organization whose mission is to improve the education level of our population, it's necessary work. Whether or not it's in the community that of color or not. We have a situation in our country right now there where because of technology, education in a lot of cases is falling to just motor skills that are related to computers. The day of a lot of imagination is going because, at least in my opinion, because everything is on a screen already made.
Sure.
So youngsters growing up often don't have a chance to imagine because it's already there. I can remember when I was a youngster growing up, we had to make believe we were pirates. We had to make believe we were cowboys and unfortunately Indians. But today it's on the screen from birth. And I see 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds with little pilots or palm cans or whatever you call them, iPads, playing games that already have these images, and they've grown up with these images, so there's no new image in their mind.
Yeah, well, and I think just reflecting on what you just said, I think part of the reason why we've moved, obviously the future economy will depend on technology, and it's great that kids are using this technology now. But I also feel that we were kind of squeezed into that direction with all of the budget cuts that have happened within the field of education, and for decades, and not just recently.
Right.
And so when you have that, you have less opportunities in the classroom, you have less after-school opportunities for kids to be able to use their curiosity as a tool to be able to continue to learn and grow. And so in order to make up for some of that, we've kind of squeezed it all into a tablet.
Yeah.
Right. And now the experience is trying to live virtually through that tablet to promote growth with students. Now, I will say that 2- and 3-year-olds know perfectly how to navigate through a tablet. Where I may still struggle with that.
Sure.
But this is the future economy, so it's good that kids are getting exposure to that. but some of that old school, having extracurricular and mentorship in school and hands-on activities really is a valuable tool. And we as educators need to push to get some of that back.
I think so. I mean, I often will laugh and tease with some of my granddaughter, for one, and I would say to her, what would you do if there was no electricity? Would you be able to tell time? The things that we were taught, that I was taught, in a different generation, obviously. Clocks weren't all digital. They actually had hands and second hands, and you had to know what those things did. That's lost today.
Yes.
It's not there. So as long as we have power to operate our technology, then we'll have that resource. But if we're ever in a situation where we don't have the power, what happens? Will people be able to count since we don't have any calculators?
Well, that's true. I think thinking back to an interview that Carl Sagan did years ago, I think it was on CNN, where he talks about if we were to lose all power, then what happens to humanity at that point?
Exactly.
Kind of go back to the Dark Ages.
Yeah.
Well, at least in countries that do have power networks and what have you, and others that don't, they'll be, for them it'll be just like every other day.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that in today's world that there are still places like that, where we're not willing to share basic technology.
Right. And so in not doing that, when there is some sort of calamity like that, we're the ones that are going to struggle.
Exactly.
And those individuals that we haven't assisted in that way will be, like I said, it'll be like part of everyday life for them.
Sure.
And they'll have to deal with difficulties, but they'll know how to handle that. We won't.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's very true. Nick, how does, just to refresh my memory and the memories of some of our viewers, how are you funded? How do you manage to keep this operation going?
Yeah. So we are funded largely by private foundations. Angel Foundation in California, Balfour Foundation, Rhode Island Foundation as well, Otto York, the Carter family. So quite a few foundations provide support for us. We also get individual donations as well, which we are very grateful for. The only federal funds that we get are block grants. And those block CDBG dollars come in through the City of Providence, and they distribute out to agencies. And so we're fortunate to get those federal dollars. But outside of that, we don't receive any state funding, municipal funding as well. And so we're really dependent largely on private foundations and individual donors as well.
Now you're located in Providence, I understand.
Correct.
But do you work with youngsters who are not necessarily from Providence? Is that correct?
Yes. So Providence, Pawtucket, Cranston, Central Falls. We had a student from Portsmouth a couple of years ago. We're an after-school program, and so we're not in the schools. And the reason why we don't have more students from outside of the urban core is that they would have to transport themselves to the office, and that can present a challenge.
Or unless someday that you're in a position to have satellite offices in some of these locations. When you mentioned CDBG, I was thinking to myself, I used to work for HUD. In fact, I worked in CDBG years ago as a financial analyst, and I was thinking that it would be interesting if you could somehow parlay the CDBG funds from each town rather than just from Providence. Get CDBG funds from Pawtucket, from Central Falls, from Cranston, and then have satellite operations in those cities when you could reach more kids.
Yes. So we've had discussions with Central Falls, with Mayor James Diosa, and also Victor Capellan while he was in superintendent in Central Falls.
Is he no longer?
No, he's moved over to the Department of Education.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and so that discussion was largely around setting up a satellite. And we're continuing that. We're continuing to look at that for the future, but it is a very real possibility to have a location there. And if we can pilot one there, then perhaps we can go into West Warwick, maybe even to Newport
Sure.
to provide those services.
Well, any town that develops a CDBG application every year could plug in some funds for that kind of a program. You know, after-school program, like I guess PASA did here for a while. But yeah, I mean, I think those would be good use of funds and probably available.
Yes.
I'm not trying to increase your workload, but I am.
Well, this would be good for the organization and for the students that we service. So yes.
How many people work with you in the program?
There's 10 of us altogether, 10 on staff. Yeah.
So that's almost like a 6-to-1 ratio.
Pretty much, yes.
If you could.
Yeah, and we have six specific advisors.
Advisors, yeah.
The rest is administrative functions within the organization.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so, you know, you mentioned CDBG. One of the things that we did this past summer, we ran a pilot program at Rhode Island College with the Providence School Department, in which we worked with 100 high school students, so from 9th grade all the way through 12. And the purpose of that program, 4-week program, was to provide college access information, college readiness tools, and also do career exploration as well. We finished that program up in early August, and next year we're looking to expand that and service even more students from the city of Providence and switch the program from 4 to maybe 6 weeks.
Was that the summer program that I guess Mayor Alorza had alluded to in his press conferences, or is that a separate one?
There could be. I mean, there are quite a few summer programs that were happening around the city, so it could have been.
So what's your success rate there?
Our success rate out of the 100 students, about 81 students completed the program.
Well, that's good.
Which is really good for a summer program.
Yeah, it is.
Because students had to opt in to participate. And it's not very often, you know, you will find kids that'll say, okay, I'll give up some of the summertime to go into classroom instruction. But these kids were all great. So.
And this was at Rick?
It was at Rhode Island College, yes. They hosted us.
So what did they kind of do there? I mean, I know you said college readiness.
Sure.
But can you be more specific as some of the stuff that they did do while they were there?
Yeah, so each week we had benchmarks they need to hit. So the first week they had to create a resume and a cover letter. And as you can imagine, for myself personally, I was maybe 19, 20 when I was asked for a resume. And I had no clue what the resume was. So we started them as freshmen, creating mock resumes and creating mock cover letters and explaining what the purpose of those documents were. We also had them fill out a common application, which is what they will more than likely do when they start applying to colleges, and go through a financial aid application as well, just to have an idea what was on there and what some of the expectations are. They created documents that outline goals for the coming school year. And then also the last benchmark that they had was a paper in which would connect a college major to a career. So whatever they were thinking about possibly going into, they had to research it. Then they had to find a school that had the major and then figure out how the major tied into that career. And what the specifics of that career path would be in terms of longevity, pay, all of these other things.
I'm curious, what were, if you can recall, what were some of the responses to the career path?
Surprisingly, I think quite a few kids were pointing towards education.
Really?
Yeah. And I say surprisingly, I think back to my high school days, and you know, I never would have guessed that I would have been in the education field. But so I can see that.
Well, I could say that too. My mom was an English teacher, and I said I'd never wanted to be a teacher. After listening to her conversations with my dad about schools and the youngsters at school, I said I couldn't be bothered with that, you know. And at the same token, my dad was a Baptist minister, and I couldn't see myself there either. But the bottom line is, you pick a career that you think is going to work for you.
Sure. Yeah.
And I followed my godfather, believe it or not, into government because that's what he was doing.
Okay.
So I went from city government to state government to federal government for my 40 years of work.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought government was a bit more lucrative, and I didn't have to deal with youngsters or the parents of youngsters. I did some coaching with youngsters when I was a younger man. And the kids were great. The parents were a pain in the neck. And I know that John Hopkins report talks a lot about what goes on in the Providence school system, but a lot of that problem stems from the lack of direction and discipline at home. When I listen to teachers say that they can't teach because a youngster has a video going on their cell phone in the classroom, where are the parents?
Yeah,
Not for you to necessarily have to respond to, but
no, but I was just going to add that yes, there might be some of the dynamic that's in the classroom, and I know we have some really good teachers in Providence. I think part of what is also in the equation is inspiring the curiosity in children to learn.
mm-hmm.
And so how do you do that as a teacher in front of the classroom when you have all of these other social things happening, when you don't have the necessary tools provided to you through budgeting, as I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So the challenge for the instructor then becomes, okay, how do I inspire this child to move forward given everything else that is happening? I like to think of our students as brilliant and as assets to the community. And so as an educator and as a college instructor, my job has always been to draw that out of students. And I think teachers try to do that in general, but there's so many other things that are happening around that kind of hamper some of that dynamic. But the kids are brilliant, and it's just a matter of unlocking that with them.
Yeah, well, you got to find it. You got to reach them.
Yes.
And that of course, is a problem. I know I was talking with when Andrew Bramson was on the show. We were talking about guidance or advisors. And I was saying the guidance counselors that existed in my school when I was growing up made assertions that certain students could or could not succeed in life because of maybe their demographics or because of their color or because of their where they came from, or they lacked financial resources for school. And so therefore you could never go to college, or you won't be able to go to college, so you should think about a trade or some sort of a labor job. Fortunately, with programs like yours and with his program, that dynamic is changing.
Yes. And so my own personal story is walking into my guidance counselor's office in the 11th grade and saying, hey, I want to go to college. And my guidance counselor telling me, no, that is not for you.
Yeah.
You should join the military.
Yes.
And I think through this work in College Visions, it's certainly an opportunity to let students know, hey, you're interested in going to college? Okay, let us guide you through that process. Because ultimately, if you really do want to go, then you will be able to go. We'll just help you with the steps along the way. We're not telling anyone, look, you're not college material, you got to keep it moving, or try something else in life.
Yeah.
That is not our call to make. Our call is to assist those who wish to pursue a post-secondary education.
Yeah, I had that, like I said, I had that exact same experience, and a lot of my friends did, because of, the economics of the time. But I'm glad that College Visions exist. I'm glad to hear that they're giving back. The graduates are coming back to do that work, because that's extremely important. Rhode Island College has a program every year about diversity and how they are addressing it. And one of the key issues was having student mentors for freshman students coming into the school. I think that's so important.
Yes.
Now, what you're doing is getting a jump on that, and same with Bramson's organization, getting a jump on that that need to have someone to talk to that they can relate to that's been through it.
Right, right. And so the advisors provide that experience. They can share that. But what we also do is we connect students who are already on campus with those who are just arriving.
Okay.
And because we're always in touch with those students, it's like welcoming a family member onto campus. And we all know the first few weeks as a freshman are the toughest in your college experience because one, you don't necessarily feel like you belong just yet, and you get homesick, right? And so a lot of kids want to go home, and it's like, no, stay the course. You know, you have people here who are looking out for you, and we're also looking out for you as your advisors, your mentors, if you will.
Yeah, I didn't get homesick, but my concern was that acceptance, and I didn't have a mentor or an advisor at the school. I went to college in Vermont in the '60s, and I was on a soccer scholarship, but not too many people that looked like me were going to school in Vermont in those days. But so having an advisor would be wonderful. Fortunately, because I was on a sports scholarship, I did have some help from the coach and things of that nature. But and speaking of which, real quick, is there scholarship money that comes with the program?
Well, we don't necessarily have scholarships that we give out. What we do have is what's called an emergency fund. So if a student has a need for books, then we will help purchase those books. They need a laptop, we can help with that as well. We can even cover some tuition costs as well. But it's on a emergency case-by-case basis. Yes.
Listen, Nick, thanks for coming back on the show.
Thank you for having me, yes.
And you know, for our viewers, you might tell us where you're located?
We're located at 131 Washington Street, downtown Providence, Suite 205.
Okay. Listen, Nick, we're going to have you back.
Thank you.
We'll stay on top of this because education is probably the most important thing for our community to make the changes that are necessary. We have run out of time, but I want to thank today's guests, Nick Figueroa, and you, the viewers, for tuning in to another segment of In Another Opinion. A special thanks to PBS for making this program possible. I'm your host, Peter Wells. Give us your opinion on Facebook or Twitter at In Another Opinion. And by all means, have a great day.
Someone gave, someone donated, someone left a legacy. Generations of generous someones have helped shape Rhode Island into this amazing place we call home. How do you thank them? By leaving your own legacy. We can help.